been almost a month since the residents of Arizona's 7th District elected Adelita Grijalva to represent them in Congress. And as we've covered extensively on this program, Speaker Mike Johnson is refusing to seat her so that he can delay her deciding vote on a discharge petition to release the Epstein files. Now, because of that, Arizona's Attorney General, Chris Mays, is now suing Mike Johnson. Here's part of an op-ed she wrote for MSNBC.com. Quote, "My message for Speaker Johnson is clear. Respect the will of the voters, seat Adelita Grijalva, and let her get to work for the Arizonans who elected her." And Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays joins us at the table.
You know what, General Mays, I think while we see what is happening in Washington with power being abused all across the country in the states, governors and attorney generals like yourself are fighting back to preserve the rights of the people. And this is an example of that. I think that this lawsuit is not just about the 7th District in Arizona. I think it's about representation for everyone and the ability to.
Hey, everyone. DR John here. So what we just witnessed, Mike Johnson is living his worst nightmare in real time, and he saw it coming. A federal lawsuit naming him personally as a defendant for allegedly refusing to seat a duly elected congresswoman because her presence would shrink his razor-thin majority. The Constitution says representatives must be seated. There's no discretion. Johnson allegedly ignored that.
Elect someone and then have that person you elected seated. What precedent are you relying on to win this lawsuit? We were all very enamored and wondering that you chose to sue the entirety of the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
Why?
So great question. So we decided to do that because we wanted to make sure that we could quickly get to the merits of the case, and we didn't want Mike Johnson to make any sort of immunity claims. So we thought that was the best route to go. But what we're relying on is the fact that the Constitution and federal statute does not allow Mike Johnson as the Speaker to deprive my state of an entire seat in the House of Representatives. We are now down a seat. We have 9 representatives, but we actually only have 8 because Adelita has not been seated. And, it's been 4 weeks since she won her election with 70% of the vote.
Because power mattered more. Simultaneously, he used his authority as Speaker to bury a House vote on releasing the remaining Epstein files, killing it before it could reach the floor. 1 week, sued personally for violating the Constitution and caught protecting Epstein documents. MAGA Mike is no longer just Trump's enabler. He's become the story. Democrats are calling it a cover-up.
And we've gotten about 6 or 7 or 8 different explanations from Mike Johnson about why he won't seat her. It was long past time for us to do something about it. So I filed that lawsuit, and, we will see him in court over this.
And you think this is about Epstein? You think this is about the fact that she's the 218 vote on Epstein?
I think you almost have to infer that. What other explanation is there? There's certainly no legitimate explanation except that she has made it clear that she's going to be the final vote on discharging the Epstein files. He's also been sort of making some statements that would suggest that this is about, holding this over the heads of our congressional delegation, including our members of the Senate, Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego, and trying to get them to, end the
Instead,
government
they've been going toe-to-toe with the Speaker. Like, it is not working out for them the way that Mike Johnson thinks it might.
Right.
No, I don't think it is.
And the framing is sticking because that is exactly what it looks like. Johnson is actively preventing transparency about the crimes of a convicted child sex trafficker. He is using his power to shield powerful people from accountability. And the question every voter is asking is simple. What is Mike Johnson hiding? Who is he protecting? And why does he think protecting powerful people is more important than giving victims and the public the truth they have been demanding for years? The optics are catastrophic.
But I'll tell you who it's definitely not working out for is the people of my state who are actively being harmed. Adelita Grijalva cannot represent the 813,000 people of her district. She can't help them with Social Security benefits. She can't help the veterans with their benefits. She can't help with the flooding issues that we've been having in her district. And, We fought a revolutionary war over something called taxation without representation, and that is exactly what is happening in the state of Arizona.
So back in April, the Speaker of the House swore in Florida Representatives-elect Jimmy Patronis and Randy Fine doing a pro forma session of Congress. And here we are now after an election in which Adelita wins. Not just wins, folks, she wins big. 70% of the vote.
Parents want to know which powerful people associated with a pedophile. Victims want accountability. The public wants transparency. And Johnson is standing in the way of all of it. He looks like he is protecting predators rather than serving the public interest. That is not a political problem. That is a moral problem. And it is one he cannot spin his way out of. Then there is the threat that keeps Johnson awake at night. Moderate Republicans, the members of his own caucus.
That's a lot in a special election, as you know. But here's where I want to dance with you a little bit, if I could.
Okay.
And that is on the constitutional point. The Speaker of the House has a lot of power that is given to him both by the Constitution and the rules of the House. What is it about your lawsuit that breaks through that? What is the precedent that you're relying on? And what do you anticipate the court's response to be given the first 2 points I've made? The constitutional power that rests in the Speaker to do what he's doing, to seat the members, and the rules of the House, which sort of, put the gates around the building.
So here's the deal, Michael. What the Speaker does not have the right to do, and what the rules of the House cannot do, is it cannot.
Who represent districts that Biden won. The ones who are watching their re-election prospects evaporate as Trump's scandals mount and Johnson's leadership fails. They are furious. Furious over the shutdown brinkmanship that Johnson keeps dragging them into. Furious over the mounting scandals that make them look corrupt by association. Furious over a Speaker who promised them victory but has delivered nothing but chaos. And some of them are threatening to resign or switch parties. Either one would be devastating. If even 3 to 5 moderate Republicans resign or flip to the Democratic Party, the Republican majority disappears instantly. Democrats would take control of the House without waiting for an election. Johnson would lose the speakership without a formal vote. His power would vanish overnight, and there is nothing he can do to stop it. He cannot promise them electoral security because Trump's toxicity guarantees losses. He cannot deliver policy wins because the Senate and the president block everything. All he can offer is appeals to loyalty, and loyalty does not pay campaign bills or win elections. The nightmare scenario Johnson feared most, being personally sued, blamed for orchestrating an Epstein cover-up to protect Trump, and watching his own conference collapse, is no longer a hypothetical. It is happening right now, in real time. And the most dramatic symbol of his fall came when he was literally served with legal papers as he walked off the House floor after a session. Process servers caught him in the hallway. Cameras recorded the moment. The image of the Speaker of the House being ambushed by legal process is now seared into the public consciousness. It communicates weakness. It communicates desperation. It communicates a man who has lost control of his environment and his political destiny. Let me take you deep into each element of this nightmare so you understand exactly why Johnson is in such a vulnerable position and why his speakership is hanging by a thread. First, the Arizona lawsuit. This is extraordinary for one simple reason. It names Johnson personally. Not the House as an institution, not the sergeant at arms, not some subordinate official, Johnson himself. The plaintiffs are the Arizona Attorney General and the Democratic Congresswoman-elect who Johnson is refusing to seat. She won her election. The Constitution says representatives-elect must be seated when the new Congress convenes. The language is mandatory. There is no wiggle room. Johnson has no legal authority to refuse. But he is allegedly refusing anyway. Why? Because seating her would reduce the Republican majority to the point where Johnson might lose effective control of the House floor. Think about what that means. Johnson is putting his personal political power above the constitutional requirement to seat a duly elected representative. He is violating his oath of office to preserve his grip on the Speaker's gavel. That is not leadership. That is corruption. That is a Speaker who has decided that his own power matters more than the Constitution he swore to defend. The lawsuit asks the federal court in Washington, D.C. to issue an order compelling Johnson to immediately seat the Congresswoman-elect. The legal merits are strong. The constitutional language is clear. Courts have consistently held that representatives-elect cannot be denied their seats based on political calculations. If the court grants the request, Johnson will be legally required to seat her. If he refuses, he faces contempt of court. Contempt can lead to fines. Fines can lead to escalating sanctions. In extreme cases, contempt can even lead to jail time. That is the legal jeopardy Johnson is facing, not political embarrassment, actual, personal, potentially criminal legal consequences. Second, the Epstein files controversy. This is even more politically toxic than the lawsuit because it goes to the heart of public trust in government. Jeffrey Epstein was a convicted child sex trafficker. His crimes were monstrous. His network of powerful associates has never been fully exposed. Democrats pushed for a vote to release all remaining Epstein files. They wanted transparency. They wanted the public to know which powerful people associated with Epstein flew on his planes, visited his properties, or were named in witness testimony. Johnson blocked that vote. He used his authority as Speaker to prevent it from ever reaching the House floor. Why? The obvious answer is that the files contain damaging information about Donald Trump and other Republican figures. Johnson is protecting Trump. He is shielding the former president from accountability. He is using the power of the Speaker's office to cover up potential crimes or associations involving a child sex trafficker. That is not a partisan accusation. That is a factual description of what Johnson is doing. He is blocking transparency. He is preventing the release of information. He is acting as a shield for powerful people who do not want the public to know about their connections to Epstein. The political damage from this is incalculable. Voters across the political spectrum want transparency about Epstein. Parents want to know which powerful people associated with a pedophile. Victims want accountability. Johnson's blockade makes him look complicit. It makes him look like he is protecting predators rather than serving the public. And every day he continues to block the release, the damage gets worse. The calls for his removal grow louder. The pressure on moderate Republicans to distance themselves from him grows stronger. Third, the moderate Republican defection threat. This is Johnson's ultimate nightmare because it is the one thing he cannot control. He cannot force moderates to stay. He cannot promise them electoral security. He cannot deliver the policy wins they need to justify their continued loyalty. All he can do is watch as they calculate their political futures and decide whether staying in the Republican caucus is worth the cost. Moderate Republicans from districts that Biden won are facing impossible re-election prospects. They are associated with Trump's disasters, but they do not have Trump's base support. They are going to lose unless they distance themselves drastically. For some of them, switching parties or resigning might be the rational choice. If they switch to the Democratic Party, they might get Democratic support in their next election. If they resign, they can avoid a humiliating defeat and potentially land a lobbying job or a cable news contributor position. Either option might be better than staying Republican and losing badly. The math is brutal. Republicans currently hold a razor-thin majority. Depending on the exact numbers, as few as 3 to 5 Republican defections could hand control of the House to the Democrats. Not in the next election, not next year. Immediately, right now. Democrats would have the votes to elect a new speaker, control committee assignments, set the legislative agenda, and launch investigations. Johnson's speakership would end without a formal vote. His power would vanish overnight. Johnson has no tools to prevent this. He cannot threaten moderates with primary challenges because they are already likely to lose their general elections. He cannot bribe them with committee assignments or pork barrel spending because he has nothing to offer. All he can do is hope that loyalty to the party outweighs self-interest. And in politics, self-interest almost always wins. Fourth, the shutdown brinkmanship pattern. This is the background context that has exhausted Johnson's own members and made defections more likely. Johnson keeps bringing Congress to the edge of government shutdown over budget fights. Each time, he demands conservative policy riders that cannot pass the Senate or get the president's signature. Each time he creates a crisis that serves no purpose. Each time he eventually backs down after weeks of chaos. The pattern is exhausting for members. They spend political capital defending shutdown threats that never achieve anything. They look dysfunctional to their constituents. They waste time that could be spent on actual legislation. Moderate Republicans are particularly frustrated because they are the ones who pay the price for Johnson's brinkmanship. They represent swing districts where voters hate government shutdowns. Every time Johnson threatens a shutdown, those moderates face attacks from Democratic opponents who blame them for the chaos. Johnson's strategy makes their re-election harder, and they are running out of patience. Fifth, the made-for-TV moment. The image of Johnson being served legal papers as he walked off the House floor is the perfect symbol of his weakness. Powerful speakers do not get ambushed by process servers in hallways. That happens to people who are avoiding legal process. That happens to people who are so embattled they cannot control their environment. That happens to people who have lost control of their political destiny. The image will be used in Democratic attack ads against every Republican. Even Republican speaker is being sued for breaking the law. Is this the party you want in charge? That messaging hurts all Republicans, not just Johnson. The earlier GOP revolts over shutdowns have created a pattern of conservative hardliners threatening to remove Johnson. After every shutdown fight, some conservatives complained Johnson did not go far enough and threaten a motion to vacate. Johnson survives each threat but is weakened each time. This pattern creates an expectation that Johnson can be removed at any moment. When a speaker faces regular removal threats, that speaker has no authority. Members do not fear a speaker who might be gone tomorrow. That makes Johnson unable to enforce party discipline or pass difficult legislation. The public mockery from allies and family compounds the damage. Even people who should support Johnson are criticizing him publicly. That suggests Johnson has no remaining political capital. Even his allies view him as a liability. The overconfidence and mispromises are also damaging. Johnson promised to pass conservative priorities, reduce spending, impeach Biden officials. He has delivered almost none of it. The gap between promises and performance makes Johnson look incompetent. He oversold what he could achieve. Now he is paying the price. The connection to broader Trump-era themes of cover-ups and voting attacks is what makes Johnson uniquely vulnerable. Johnson covering up Epstein files is protecting powerful predators. Johnson refusing to seat an elected representative is attacking democracy. These are not separate issues. They are Johnson being MAGA in the worst possible ways. He is becoming the face of MAGA corruption and anti-democracy. Democrats do not just attack Trump anymore. They attack Johnson as Trump's enabler, the man who uses speaker power to protect Trump and undermine democracy. That makes Johnson toxic to swing voters. The Arizona lawsuit will likely succeed. The legal merits are clear. The Constitution is unambiguous. Johnson has no legal grounds to refuse seating the congresswoman-elect. The federal court in Washington, D.C. has jurisdiction over cases involving Congress. The court will likely issue an order compelling Johnson to seat her. Johnson will have to comply or face contempt. Complying might cost him his effective majority. If seating her gives Democrats functional control through defections, Johnson's speakership ends immediately. Democrats plus Republican defectors could elect a new speaker or simply block all Republican priorities. Either way, Johnson becomes powerless. The Epstein files controversy will intensify. Democrats will keep pushing for release. Every time Johnson blocks transparency, the framing gets stronger. Speaker Johnson is covering up Epstein files. What is he hiding? That message resonates with voters. Parents want to know. Victims want accountability. The public wants transparency. Eventually, either Johnson caves and allows a vote, or the election changes House control, and Democrats release the files immediately. Either way, Johnson's blockade is temporary. His only accomplishment is delaying transparency, and delay makes him look guilty of cover-up. Moderate Republican defections are increasingly likely as the midterms approach. As polls show a massive Democratic wave coming, moderate Republicans will calculate their odds. Some will conclude switching or resigning is better than losing. Once the first one switches, others may follow, creating a cascade. If 3 to 5 moderates switch or resign, Democrats gain majority before the midterms. That would be historic. A party losing majority before an election without a vote. It would devastate Republican morale heading into the midterms and guarantee an even bigger Democratic wave. Johnson will likely face a formal motion to vacate from conservatives. Hardliners frustrated with Johnson's failures and scandals will attempt to remove him, just as Kevin McCarthy was removed. Johnson might survive the vote, but he will be further weakened. Even surviving a removal vote damages him. It shows he has lost control of his caucus. It emboldens his opponents. It makes him look weak to the public. The November midterms will almost certainly end Johnson's speakership regardless. Democrats are projected to gain 50 to 70 House seats based on special election results and Trump's failures. That gives Democrats a comfortable majority. The new Congress will elect a Democratic speaker. Johnson might not even run for re-election. If polls polls show he is losing badly, he might retire rather than face defeat. Johnson's legacy will be as one of the weakest speakers in history. He accomplished almost nothing legislatively. He faced constant revolts. He was sued personally. He covered up Epstein files. That is comprehensive failure. Historians studying Johnson's speakership will use it as an example of what happens when a speaker lacks a mandate and lacks skills. Johnson will be a cautionary tale about elevating inexperienced members to leadership. The damage to the Republican Party from Johnson's failures will persist beyond Johnson. Every Johnson scandal makes all Republicans look bad. Every Johnson cover-up makes Republicans look corrupt. That brand damage affects every Republican candidate in the midterms. Democrats will use Johnson's failures to recruit Republican defectors. Democrats can offer committee positions, campaign support, and endorsements to Republicans willing to switch parties. With Johnson this week, some Republicans might take the deal. Johnson's personal legal jeopardy will continue growing. Being sued is just the beginning. If Johnson defies courts or continues cover-ups, criminal charges could follow. Johnson might need a criminal defense lawyer in addition to civil attorneys. The bottom line is this: House Speaker Mike Johnson is facing his absolute worst nightmare scenario. A multi-front collapse including personal lawsuits, massive Epstein files backlash, and the very real risk of losing his razor-thin House majority or being stripped of his speakership by his own members. The scenario Johnson feared most, being personally sued in federal court, blamed for orchestrating an Epstein cover-up to protect Trump, and watching his own conference threaten to hand power to Democrats, is no longer hypothetical. It is actually happening right now in real time. The Arizona Attorney General and a Democratic Congresswoman-elect have sued the United States House and Johnson personally in D.C. federal court for refusing to swear her in. They accuse him of a blatant violation of the law and ask the court to force his hand immediately. Johnson faces absolutely massive backlash for blocking a Democratic vote to release key Jeffrey Epstein files. Coverage frames this as nightmare news that Johnson is actively protecting Trump and other powerful people from public exposure of their connections to a convicted child sex trafficker. That framing fuels explosive calls to strip him of the speaker's gavel. Moderate Republicans who are furious over shutdown brinkmanship and mounting scandals are threatening to resign their seats or flip parties. That would instantly end the GOP majority and Johnson's speakership without requiring a formal vote. On top of all these crises, Johnson has already been literally served with legal papers as he walked off the House floor after a session. It is a made-for-TV dramatic moment that commentators call the perfect embodiment of his nightmare scenario becoming reality rather than remaining a theoretical fear. This piles on to earlier nightmare beats: GOP revolts over shutdowns, internal coup chatter, public mockery from allies and family about overconfidence and mispromises. The Epstein files fight and the Arizona lawsuit tied Johnson directly to two themes that voters hate: cover-ups for powerful people and attacks on voting representation. That makes him uniquely vulnerable as the face of MAGA in this political moment. Johnson is now one of the weakest speakers in modern history. Every scandal is a potential trigger for the end of both his speakership and the MAGA movement's grip on the House. The Arizona lawsuit will likely succeed, forcing Johnson to comply. The Epstein files controversy will intensify as Democrats keep pushing for release. Moderate Republican defections are increasingly likely as the midterms approach, with as few as 3 to 5 switches giving Democrats majority before the election. Johnson will likely face a formal motion to vacate from conservatives. The November midterms will almost certainly end Johnson's speakership, with Democrats projected to gain 50 to 70 seats. Johnson's legacy will be as one of the weakest speakers in history who accomplished nothing legislatively. The damage to the Republican Party from Johnson's failures will persist beyond Johnson. Democrats will use Johnson's failures to recruit Republican defectors. Johnson's personal legal jeopardy will continue growing, potentially requiring criminal defense representation. This is what happens when a speaker built on nothing but loyalty to a collapsing political figure finally faces the consequences of that loyalty. Johnson hitched his wagon to Trump. He swore total allegiance. He made himself MAGA Mike, and now he is being destroyed by the very scandals and failures he helped cover up and enable. The nightmare he feared most is here, and it is only getting worse.